Hey everyone, we're back for another episode of the Help I'm a Camera Nerd podcast with me, Anderson, aka Films by AW, and my main man.
Are you handing over to me for this?
I am. We never get this right.
Okay.
We never get this right.
We never do get it right. And you know what? You've been saying it all this time, and we constantly usually have to redo this intro, but I say we leave this in. This is how it is. This is the truth behind podcasting, you see. You get it wrong.
This is raw. This is how it should be. Yeah, this is good.
So my name is Mark, and my YouTube channel is That Camera Nerd.
So, yeah, we got a lot to discuss today. We've had it's been great to see how many people watched the last couple episodes of our pod. With we split it up. We did it a bit differently because we were talking about our films, 7x7 and Exercising Barry. You can watch those two podcasts here. Why am I still looking off screen? Here and here. Or listen wherever you get your podcast. But yeah, a bit of camera news. We got a really interesting topic to talk about, which is what it actually means to be a DP now, a term that we kind of feel is starting to be overused. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because we've been talking offline about it. But then obviously some camera news, really the last few months. I mean, you can't really avoid it if you're looking on film YouTube at all, or I should say camera YouTube. The Pyxis release is finally out. This Blackmagic Pyxis, which we both at some point had a pre-order of, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We did.
We did. And for separate reasons, we canceled. And the Canon C400 and C80, they seem to be making the rounds. I want to hear your thoughts on them. I had a chance at an event with Pro AV. They came up to Manchester, and I was able to play with the camera. Talking like 10 minutes, just actually hold it and see what it's like. But what's your thoughts on, just seeing, what's coming out recently?
I mean, with the Pyxis, obviously, we'd been talking about that camera coming out for a long time, the box camera that Blackmagic were making, or that we hoped they were making, and then finally found out they were making. Like many other people, I'm sure, we all got excited and pre-ordered. And it was, I mean, for me, it's not so much, I didn't cancel my pre-order because I didn't think the camera was going to be good. I cancelled my pre-order because I already have a camera. I have two cameras. I have the Lumix and the Komodo. And, apart from full frame, it didn't really feel like I was going to be getting a lot for the money I would be spending. It's always a hassle to sell cameras and move to a different camera entirely. So in the end, it just felt like I'm happy with what I've got, and for now, I'm going to hold off. I love the form factor. I will say that about the Pyxis. I love how it's built. I wish it had V-Lock batteries, but whatever. I'm sure there's some kind of plate that will eventually come out for that if there isn't one already. And I think for me, I'll probably hold off, and I'd be interested to see with what they come out with next, just because obviously they released the Ursa and then they released the Ursa Pro a year later, I think it was, or maybe 2 years later. And that obviously had all the bells and whistles that were missing from the first one. So I think there's a lot that they can add to this. And, it makes sense from a manufacturer's point of view about how you hold certain features back so that then you can release them in a different variation of the camera further down the line. And it's good that they, that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's a terrible thing to do, because that keeps the camera cheaper, and the Pyxis is a very reasonably priced camera. And then when they release a pro version of it, that's probably going to have another $1.5 grand, $2 grand added onto the price tag, and that's going to have probably your NDs and stuff like that. So I think that, I think a few people that I know are probably holding off for that version, but that's mainly just because I think when the Pyxis, what it's come out with, a lot of other cameras currently have those features. So yeah, I think in the end, I cancelled my pre-order and I stuck with what I've got, and I'm happy with that decision. But it still is a really cool camera. It looks really cool. I haven't had the pleasure of having one in my hands, but you have obviously held one and you've tested one. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting camera. I mean, look, it's no different than the camera I'm filming on now, image-wise, the Cinema 6K, the Blackmagic Cinema 6K full frame. We both reviewed the Cinema 6K full frame, and we were both excited about the Pyxis. I think my issues with the Blackmagic versus 6K Pro and obviously the Cinema 6K, even though I've owned both of them and love using them, is just how the form factor, right? So the Pyxis did answer a lot of those questions. When I got to use it briefly at the Pro AV event, it had a Nissi Athena PL lens adapted to it with I think a Nissi PL L to PL adapter, and it felt really nice in the hand. The camera is a lot more dense than you think it is. It's definitely heavier than the Komodo. It's bigger than the Komodo. And I'm not mad at that. There's enough real estate for, that it didn't feel too small and you can mount things on. Like I was using an FX6 the other day and mounting a wireless transmitter and not making it considerably longer. Just being able to put it on the side and having the space to do that would be ideal. And with a Pyxis, you can. So I think it's definitely one for, bigger productions and things like that. I'd say, I canceled my pre-order because the Cinema 6K full frame sale. That was the only reason I canceled it, because I used the Cinema 6K on a short film, on a few projects, and I liked the look of it. I liked that, and I liked going back to full frame. I hadn't used a full frame camera in years. I hadn't owned one since since the Sony A7R2, which was a interesting mirrorless camera, but not really made for video. So I forgot how awesome full frame with a 24-70 lens is in terms of an all-round camera. But it was good to use it in person. I think I mean there's still part of me that's like, man, because the form factor it does, and I hate to bring this into it, but for clients, it does look more impressive than the 6K Pro and 6K body. And I'm not just the guy that's like, oh, I just want to make stuff that I want to have a camera that looks cool. No, but it can help client perception, and also the ability to have higher capacity batteries is something that really appeals to me. The BPU at the back. Oh, that's going to give you the same watt hours. It'll be a bit long, but it'll give you the same watt hours as a V-Log battery. And the biggest pain with the 6K Pro and the Cinema 6K is the battery life. Is you're constantly fretting about it because you put it on for half an hour and you're already seeing it go into the red in voltage, even though it's probably good for another 20 or 30 minutes. But you're constantly thinking about it. Now I know there's some things that they haven't fixed in terms of the camera just gets to a certain position, just switches off, from what I understand. But there's a lot to like about it. But like you, I didn't mind. I didn't mind that. But like I also, when I think about my uses, sometimes I want a camera that has I don't know if I want both the cameras I own to only shoot RAW, and whilst it's tempting to kind of think, the Cinema 6K and the Pyxis together, that's a heck of a combination. There's some jobs where I just want a quick and easy, smaller file format and not need to do the transcoding that I normally do with my Cinema 6K. So there's part of me that thinks, if it had an NDs as well, I think I would sell my Cinema 6K and get it, because that's what I love from the 6K Pro. But like you, and I think there's been a lot of chatter. And again, I'm not going to slate YouTube too much because obviously we're putting this video on YouTube and, we both have YouTube channels. But look, in the real world, the image is beautiful. I don't know how all of a sudden it's been the talk like this image isn't beautiful. But then again, that's a very small YouTube bubble. And not in production, I'm sure people are going to be using this. I was even at a trade show. My friends from Provision, they had an open day and they had a few manufacturers come around, and the battery manufacturer, I think it was not Anton Bauer, the PAG battery company, PAG, however you pronounce the name. They were there and they were talking about how they're making different battery accessories for it. So I think in terms of a camera for a working cameraman, I think it's going to tick a lot of the boxes. But I would love to have the internal NDs. And I think, like you said, it feels kind of weird that a camera just come out. We're already talking about the Pro version in the future. It kind of feels like, well, just buy the camera and make use of it. If I didn't have the Cinema 6K, I would definitely have got a Pyxis. I would have definitely still bought one. I would have one right now because it's everything I've wanted from that kind of camera system, minus ND and minus having a 10-bit codec. But I'd forgive it. I'd forgive the 10-bit codec if it had NDs. I think. But I think that's it was really cool using that. And at the event as well, there was a C400, which, man, they've thrown everything at the can with this one. 6K full frame, crops into 4K. Up to 10 stops of ND, triple base ISO. I didn't even know that was a thing. They've really thrown the kitchen sink at this one. Using it, it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. The price is obviously, a little bit more expensive than FX6. I think it's like $7,000 all in. And so that camera is like, okay, there's something to think about. But that's more of a bigger investment. And I'm not sure that's where the direction I want to go, because I just rent so many cameras now that I don't know if I want to spend more than $4,000 on a camera that I may not use 60% of the time. If I'm spending that much, I'm going to want to use the camera on every shoot. And some cases I'm like, well, I need an FX6 here, or, oh, we're shooting on Alexa, or, oh, we're shooting on Komodo. And I like the flexibility. So psychologically, I don't want to spend more than a certain amount. But it is a really awesome camera. But the issue they'll have is, especially in the UK, if everybody's shooting an FX6 and people have workflows and the color science and the LUT's already set up for that, if I'm just going to say, I bought the C400, I promise it's better. It's Canon. People might say, oh, that's great. But we already have our LUTs set up for Sony. Could you bring an FX6? That's the only reticence. Maybe that's nonsense and it won't matter. I'd have to work with a few more clients. I have to see what my clients would say. But like most, a lot of my clients that I'm shooting for recently, it's like an FX6. You're thinking, all right, okay, let me get an FX6. So if I bring this camera that I know is better theoretically, and but they'd be like, well, ooh, is it different than the FX6? And you'd be like, yeah, but it's just a slight tweak in the grade. I don't know, basically. And the thing about Canon is, it's that B camera setup. Sony, to get a B camera for you're spending another $3,000 on like a R5 or C70 or something like that. Whereas with an FX6, you can just get like an old A7S III or even an FX30, and that the color science will match a little better and fit in gimbals. But yeah, I think there's some exciting stuff out. Great for people buying, wanting to make a purchase now. But the other thing, it is kind of a tricky time to be buying anything from everyone. That's the thing.
It is, because stuff is just coming out so quick, and it's like, to some degree, a lot of this stuff, it's not really giving you anything that you need vitally over anything that we had, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like, the cameras back then, you could easily be shooting great stuff on now. You don't really... It's just typical tech, isn't it? That's what it is. It's like
returns.
Yeah, it's like, here, have this. Oh, you need this, you need that. And the reality is, you don't. And I'm going to... you heard it here first. I am shooting my first feature next year. I'm going to be doing that on the Komodo and Lumix. I would do it on whatever camera I owned, to be honest. Yeah. Like, the camera is one of the last things I'm thinking about in this situation. As long as you've got a camera and it's, Blackmagic, Sony, Canon, Red, whatever it is, it's like almost certainly going to be good enough. So, yeah, that's realistically what I'm thinking about. Is I just want something that's going to get me through the day. I know how to use it, and it's not going to be causing me any issues, because there's going to be enough going on that that needs to be my reliable little thing that I don't have to think about. And I'm going to be, directing and DPing this, so it's a lot of responsibility. So I'm just going to go with what I like to use, which is going to be a combination of the Lumix and the Komodo, because the Lumix will sit nicely on a gimbal. That can just sit on there. I can get the LiDAR sensor. It shoots RAW. And that's just going to live on that. And then the Komodo is going to be, shooting the majority of it. And that's a solid... That one of those cameras cost me like $7,000. The other cost me $2,000 or $1,500. I can't remember. But either or, they're both great cameras. They both produce great looking footage. And I know that they're both solid, really, when it comes to it. If I didn't have my Komodo, I would happily shoot it all on the Lumix, and I wouldn't think twice about it. So... these cameras are probably going to be great. Yeah, especially the Canon looks great. It does throw everything in the kitchen sink at you, which is fantastic. if production houses or whatever are demanding a Sony as they usually do, it's because their technical ability isn't good enough to grade something else. I'm kidding. It's because people are notoriously lazy. That's what it is. And they just don't want to have to do the work. And Sony this and Sony that. I'm not slating Sony. They're great cameras. Sony are feels like Apple a little bit, where they've got the audience so they can give you less for your money and you're happy about it. Which there's other benefits to Sony stuff. You know, I'm talking about, you know, they don't, with the FX6, you don't get RAW, for instance, but with most other cameras around that price range, you do get RAW thrown in, with the exception of obviously the Kinfinity, because it doesn't do RAW. But Sony does feel like
as of today, I just saw something.
As of today.
Don't ask me why I still follow the Kinfinity, because I didn't buy one. I was like, oh, let me follow these groups in case I buy one. No, they've got it's not a compressed RAW. I think it's DNG. It's uncompressed RAW, so they technically do. Let the record show that we have seen that Kinfinity released a update, so they now have RAW on those really good cameras. Really good cameras. So I mean,
DNG is RAW. It's probably not the RAW I would want to work with, but it's RAW, big, isn't it? And it's big. Yeah, I don't think it works. Does it work in DaVinci? It does work in DaVinci, right?
I'd have to check. It's just more of a technicality. I don't know. I don't workflow wise. I don't know how feasible it is to work in DNG just because of the sizes. I mean, obviously the beauty of Blackmagic RAW, of R3D, of even Sony OCN, I know it's not technically called, it's a 16-bit codec, it's RAW, is that they're somewhat compressed, right? There's somewhat compressed formats and ProRes RAW. It's like we want the beauty of having all this data, but it has to be compressed. Otherwise, it's the workflow becomes really difficult for this. I think your point, and we're gonna lead into our other topic that we're gonna discuss. I think your point about the diminishing returns that your cameras are having now. I think, look, if you're listening to this podcast thinking I need to jump on this new camera trend, and you already have a very capable camera and that's working for you, and you're able to make the art you want, the content you want to make, and it's nothing wrong with it, don't upgrade. You don't need to. There's one thing I think, and whilst I love this space, I think it's really interesting to have a community. This constant like upgrading of cameras, it's so unrealistic. You know, a camera is something you buy once every 5-6 years, not every 18 months. It's kind of crazy when it's like, oh, I'm upgrading to this camera, and obviously it's nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's what they're doing to stay relevant in the tech space. But these are big investments, people. We're talking, we're not talking 200-300 pounds. We're talking 5, 6, 10,000 pound cameras. These are investments. This is not something you buy every year. It's something you make work and you think about and you make the decision. If you already have a wonderful camera that works for you, if you already have an FX6 Komodo, 6K Pro, Cinema 6K, Lumix, or Canon C70, these cameras are incredible as is. I think what's really interesting is seeing how these old manufacturers are forced into innovating and they make these amazing cameras that 5 years later are like, yeah, they're still pretty good. So I think like anyone who's thinking that they're not good enough and you can't shoot your project on it, stop waiting for get out and shoot some stuff. And now I think this is going to lead into our main topic that we want to talk about today. Well, we talked about cameras for 20 minutes, but we are the Help I'm a Camera Nerd podcast. So what do people expect? So look, I see the term DP around a lot these days. I remember when we were finishing uni and talking to DPs and talking about the career path and then just how much work takes to really have that name, director of photography. Now it kind of feels like not only there's more DPs than ever before, but it just feels like it's just the thing you put. No one puts camera operator anymore. It feels like DP. But I think there's a misconception about what a DP is actually meant to do in a project. And look, Mark, you've been a DP for 12 years, right? You study cinematography at the MA in London Film School. You've shot tons of short films, music videos, commercials. You know, doing a bit of a CV plug for you. And, you know, you can watch Mark's showreel here. But what do you think? What do you think about the term DP? Do you think it's diluted now? And what do you think a DP is? That's like 5 questions in one. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think, like, firstly, like, the industry, I think, dictates a lot of stuff. So I don't want to go deep into this, but, you know, the industry's massively changed over the past 10 years, and the roles that you're expected to fill in the boxes you should tick now have become a lot bigger. So you are expected to just do a lot more, not on the high end stuff, but in everyday life. You know, you are expected to kind of, you get less crew these days. You know, I was shooting stuff maybe 6 years ago where we had much bigger crews than we do today because budgets have just gotten smaller. Like, the industry has been affected. So that's definitely changed a lot of stuff. But I will say, like, I've got a lot of friends who are DPs, and I've worked with a lot of DPs because I also direct as well and shoot stuff as well as shoot stuff. So I will say that a lot of people, I think, get bogged down in the technical stuff of being a DP. And maybe, you know, I'm talking about, I guess, drama a lot here, where your job as a DP is obviously you're in charge of the lighting and camera department. But, you know, it's an artistic job role. So a lot of people know technical stuff being a DP, and I think it's probably difficult to get high or far in your career without knowing technical stuff. But we were always told, you know, that DPs don't necessarily technically have to know how to light, because that's what a gaffer does. You know, you tell the gaffer what you want, and you can do that in many forms. You could tell them exactly what you want. You could be like, put this 300 watt here, put a 1K there, you know, put some gels on it. Or you could be a lot looser in how you explain to your gaffer. And over time and working relationship, I'm sure that would change anyway. But you could easily be like, you know, I want harsh sunlight coming through here. I want it to be really golden, and I want like a 2-stop contrast ratio. I want a bit of light here and some shadow there. And then it's up to the gaffer to go away and figure out how that's done. And that's what a gaffer does. A gaffer is there to be head of the lighting department, and not head of the lighting department, second in command to you, and they'll tell all the sparks what to do and where to put lights and stuff like that. And, you know, likewise, you may have a camera operator, and they're in charge of everything above the tripod. And then you got a grip who's in charge of everything below the tripod, and you got ACs and stuff. So I think I've worked with people and know people, and sometimes I think some people get bogged down in that technical stuff and forget that actually, you know, the most important thing is the film, right? So you're there to do a job, and that job is to essentially give the director, advise the director, but give the director what they have in their head. So sometimes it may be, you might not, it's hard to say, but sometimes I think people can, certain shoots that I've been on, not so much anymore, but definitely in the past, certain shoots kind of get monopolized by the time it takes people to light. And that's because that takes the longest. Like, that's usually what takes the most time. But when things start to run over and other people start to lose time from their job roles, then that's when, you know, things get a little bit sticky. And I think the most important thing to remember is that you're just one part of a much bigger machine.
Yes.
And so it is the job of the DP to essentially get the best outcome for the film. And I think some people can get caught up in what they want to do, and their job has to be perfect because they don't want something to not look good. And, you know, that could make them look bad. But I think realistically that if you can't do your job in the amount of time that has been dictated, and usually, you know, this isn't just dropped on you on the day. Some shoots, yes, it will be. But on shoots that are planned, at least, the AD will have spoken to you about how long you supposedly would need to do that. And that's tried to be factored in to the shoot. So if you turn up on the day and things don't go right, you can obviously say, I need a bit more time, but you can't keep doing that. And it's important to remember that, you know, you have to do your job within the allotted time. So you might be able to light a fantastic shot in 3 hours, but you might only have 1 hour. And so you've got to do your job in that
Yeah.
time.
Oh.
And
And
it's just important. I think it's always important to remember that when you take time away for your job role, you're taking it away from someone else. So
Yes.
it's you've got to work within the confines of the shoot, and being great at lighting is part of it, but also being able to do that job in a timely manner is another part of it. So being a DP is that basically. It's pulling all of those things together in the allotted time that you have, doing a good job and making sure that it's all for the benefit of the film. You're giving people what you've talked about, and you're not going rogue and, delaying and changing things last minute because you think it looks better.
You know what? I think that's such a powerful point, that reminding that cinematography is one part of filmmaking, but cinematography is there's art direction that goes inside of that. There's costume, there's blocking with the actors, there's yes, there's a technical side of it, and I think the technical side, I would argue, and I don't, people don't take this the wrong way, I think it's because it's easier to know the technical side. I do think it's easier to learn the technical side and then be like, okay, yep, I know how to technically do this. But the whole point of it being art is that you are then understanding how to do something, but then you're understanding the motivation of the film of why you shouldn't. There's no point me soft lighting a scene with almost no contrast if it's meant to be like a serial killer talking to a potential victim. Then it's like, that's a completely wrong vibe. I don't care if I've used an aperture 600D through, with a light dome going through some soft frost on a flag. It's not a flag, but on a trace frame. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh, that looks good, but it's not appropriate for the mood that we're trying to create for the movie. What is the mood we're trying to create? And so this is obviously where the planning part comes into it, because you can start to actually think, okay, artistically, this is why we're doing it this way. We're lighting it this way. But also, this is how much time it's going to take. You'll say this, and other DPs I say this, he'll say this. He's like, you guys know I shoot fast. And, yes, I would, because I never have any decent budgets. So I'm always pushing it further than I should be. But it's a big part of that push is, okay, we got to get this in the can. I don't know if I'm gonna get an opportunity to do this again. So let's just get it right. And in that, you got to make sure you finish the movie. There might be some bits you need to compromise on, or you're getting the DP. And by the way, DP is director of photography for anyone who's unsure of what we're talking about. But you want to get the DP what they need in terms of the crew and the team. But then, it's just about making the day. If you've made this beautiful cinematic sequence, I hate that term. If you just made this sequence of shots that doesn't tell the story, but they look well, they look lit. I mean, it's like the film is rough. No one's going to watch it. No one's going to want to watch it again. So I think it's always important to think of the art of it, and remembering we're artists. I know that there's challenges around, how much content we have to make now, and compared to what we used to do versus now, we obviously need to do more. We obviously need to wear more hats, but there's a difference of, going out there and making sure everything is exposed and looks great, as opposed to what's the art I'm trying to get across. What am I trying to convey with this lighting and this framing and the certain f-stop I'm at? Not just, oh, I can just go to 1.4 and use this beauty soft light here. It's like, okay, yeah, you can, but are we trying to make a scene where the person's regaining consciousness or they're losing focus, they're losing consciousness, so everything's blurry in the background? Is that what we're trying to do? Or is it that technically it's cool, quote unquote, to do that? And I think that's something not everyone has the time to think about constantly, but this is where I come back to the term DP, where I feel like it's more marketing now that people use that term DP because they're like, it's going to get me more work if I say I'm a DP, when really what you're doing, and it may look good, but what you're doing is maybe just a lighting cameraman or a videographer, which that's nothing. Those are great roles that require talented people. But sometimes it's just like, I'm just going to do what I always do and go.
Yeah.
That's not DPing. That's just shooting. That's shooting, and you're shooting it good, but just doing what you always do for every project you work on. That's not being a DP.
And also, you know, there's a certain thing with diminishing returns and lights. Like, if you've got unlimited time to light a scene, then fair enough, go nuts. But don't, like, I think people often forget that, you know, it's not just about the light, it's about the absence of light. You're not just there to light, you're there to take light away. You know, that's one thing. And sometimes I've worked on some shoots where there's just so many lights and it's taken like 3 hours to light the scene, and you are looking around and you're going, is that really doing anything? Like, that tiny little thing there that you would only notice if you had a side-by-side comparison of with and without, like, that's a diminishing return. We've sat here and you've fiddled with it for like 30 minutes and it's not done enough, really. And, you know, I'll always go back to that story we got told at film school from a DP where he was working with Roger Deakins, and he lit this whole scene. He was super nervous because I think it was one of his first jobs, especially with Roger Deakins, and he put all these lights out and he was like, what do you think? And Roger Deakins was like, it's good, but I'd probably do this. And he took a bunch of the lights away, just kept it simple. And I think sometimes you maybe feel, you have a tendency to feel like you might not be doing your job if you haven't gone big. You know, maybe you've seen other people put loads of lights up and you're like, should I be doing that? And it's ultimately about how it looks and if it works. And there are obviously, you know, adverts and stuff like that. They're notoriously got loads of lights. It's got a very glossy look, and that's usually done with lots of lights. And your scene may absolutely call for a bunch of lights. I'm not saying that you should never use plenty of lights. I'm saying that you should be realistic with what you do and get the best look with, I guess, the least amount of lights a lot of the time, because obviously you just don't want loads of stuff in there. If one of those batteries, or if you got power to it all, fair enough. But the more you do, the more you probably need to change when you change angle. So it is.
Yes. That point.
I like to use very natural looking lights, and I'm not always on jobs where I get to do what I want. And that's important to remember. You don't always get to do what you want as a DP. And if you only take jobs where you can light the type of things you want to light, then great if you can make a living like that. But I certainly can't. I need to take jobs of all kinds. So, you know, some jobs will call for that and some jobs won't. And I like naturalistic looking stuff, and I love horror films. So definitely, there's definitely a place for the unnaturalistic stuff. For me personally, I love using like RGB lights and you know it, using different color gels. But I don't try and incorporate my style into every film that I write and direct. That's important for me. That, like, you know, Exercising Barry was shot outside. It was very naturalistic. A lot of my other films use RGB, and I love using RGB. But in the end, for that film, it felt right to go down the more naturalistic route. And I think that's important, that you at least are having those conversations with the films that you're working on. Like, what is right for this? Not what do I want to impose on it? Absolutely bring your style to something, but first and foremost, it's the film. That's the film that matters. Nothing else matters. The film matters. Doing what's best for the film is the most important job, and that's your job as a DP, is to figure out what is best for the film and do that.
I think that's a great point, and I'd also add on to that from a director perspective, because, you know, to be honest, I'm more of a director. I direct way more than I DP, you know. So I'm a director that sometimes DPs or sometimes shoots. I don't really like to qualify with the word DP because, again, as we've talked, there's so much in the role. But how many times have I come to you with the treatment of, this is the mood I want for the film? I know your style that you like to do might be different, but I know that. But I'm also coming to you with a creative choice because I know it's not going to be exactly how I've mood boarded it. Otherwise, I should go to the DPs that shot those things on the mood board, which obviously if you have unlimited ad budgets, you can do that. But it's like, I'll come to you, I want it to have that kind of feel, and it's about, okay, how can I do this? How can I create this? But then how I added my own my own little paintbrush onto this, my little extra little bit. That's me into this style. And I always find that's a really interesting challenge to give DPs because, again, yeah, we know commercials are meant to be nice and glossy and whatnot, just look great. But it's I feel with the dramas and the narrative or the music videos or short films where it's you just, okay, this is a vision I have. You know, your DP I love working with. What do you think? I know it's gonna be, it's about pulling everyone to that style. As a director, I'm trying to guide this creative cargo ship, right?
I like that.
It's a slow boat, and I'm trying to get everybody on board. I'm keeping with these shit ones.
Nice.
And the waves of production are gonna go up and down. No, no, but really, I'm trying to guide everybody in this vision. You know, that's my job. I'm the leader of the creative leader of the production, and I've got to lead. So I'm gonna have, this is the mood I want. This is the thing I create. And what I keep telling my students is, the more you do mood boards, the more you as a director know what you want. It starts to subconsciously pull the whole project towards that look, that feeling, that sound, if you've got these references. And I find, you know, when I give my DPs that, it always brings the project closer to what's in my vision. Never maybe 100%, because again, you can't recreate, you know, frame for frame what's going on in the dreams in your brain, but you start to get it closer. And I think that's the art of it. That's the art of it, because you might say, you know, let's look back. Let's go way back and like think about the scene when in Diembe, he sat on the bed, and you can watch Diembe at the link below, where he sat on the bed because he's just had the racial confrontation with this Diembe said with his friend's dad, and it's this kind of silhouetted kind of smoky feeling where there's like light coming through the window in front of him, and we're silhouetted behind him. And I artistically, it captured the mood perfectly for what we wanted from that bit of the story. It wasn't just, oh, we're doing this because it looks cool or we want to be gothic. It's like, no, this is a somber point of the film. He's had this devastating confrontation. Here's the lighting to now go with the mood we are in. And that was lit differently to other scenes in the film as well. You know, that was lit very differently to the classroom, and then even to the kitchen. It was very different.
Only one light in that scene, if I remember rightly, because we were facing the window. So we literally had a little RGB panel for a fill, and the rest of it was just... And I think that was only on the side shot as well, to give a little bit of light to the face, a little bit of a kick, like a rim light, to Diembe as he was sat on the bed. And also that double then that also lit his mum that was sat next to him. And then in the shot towards the window, I don't think we had any lights at all. I think that was literally like just silhouetted, and it worked really well.
And there you go. I mean, but like, can we remember how we shot some random corporate where it looked nice, but it's like, okay, actually, how do we like that interview? You don't really remember. But the fact that you remember is because of the artistic effort you put in and the emotion that scene gave. It's art. So you remember how you do your art. And I think that's where I'd implore people to kind of think about. So what are we saying? Are we saying people shouldn't be willy-nilly having the name DP, or what are we saying, Mark?
No, I'm not saying that. Like, I don't ever want to take away people's right to declare themselves whatever they are job-wise, because I think it took me a long time to, you know, consider myself a DP, and I don't think it's fair to kind of chastise someone because they step foot out of uni and have decided they're a DP. You know, I think there's a certain amount I admire about that, but I think it's just, be aware that, you know, buying a camera and some lights and going out on shoot, maybe that you'll get by calling yourself a DP and that'll be fine. and you'll do okay. But I suppose what I consider a DP to do is to kind of be capable of working in the confines of a shoot and be capable of working quick and effectively and leading a team, knowing what that team does to some degree, and, you know, being able to give people what they're looking for. And if you can do all of those things, then yeah, I think call yourself a DP. I suppose it's just be aware of what the job role is in various settings, because going out on a corporate shoot and being a DP, you might be expected to carry out different things too. And this is a sign of the industry changing, what I mentioned earlier, but your job role may vary in different settings. So I guess a competent DP can move between those various shoots and tick all those boxes when they need to. That's what I'd say.
I'd agree, but I'd also add it's about experience. I always saw the title about being experienced. If I'm hiring a DOP and I've got a shoot that's, you know, 10, 15 grand budget, 20 grand budget on the line, I don't want someone that can't do what I'm asking them to do, or, you know, we may not have the time, and it's the experience you're able to dig in, you know. And I don't want to go back on what I said earlier about, oh, you're doing the same thing every time, because that's not what I'm saying with this. It's being able to pick up that experience. It's you being able to go, oh, we need a shot that conveys someone being sad and I need a smoky atmosphere. Okay, actually, on DMA, I lit it this way. So you know what? We could recreate that. Okay, maybe next time we'll need to put a HMI out the window with a bit of trace frame and, you know, for, you know, some half soft frost, whatever, to create that. But we can, but you know how to get the result. And for me, that's only comes to experience. And I understand why people want to, you know, call themselves that. It's a cool title. It's fine, you know, but I always think it's the experience. It's like, what are the experience you have? How, if things kick the fan, you know, we put a schedule together, but maybe the actor or the client is completely just gone off the rails and wants to do something different. And I want to then lean on that person to be like, look, okay, I know the client's been funny or the actor's funny. Can we still pull this out the bag? You know, they can go, okay, maybe what we initially planned, no, but I got this, I can pull this idea from my bag of tricks from the 10 years that I've been doing this, 15 years I've been doing this, 20 years I've been doing this, that will give us maybe some of the way there. That's what's exciting. And then it's the experience part of it. And I think that's the part where I worry that that's being lost now. So whereas it's like, yeah, you know, I've been doing this a couple of years, I'm a DP. That's fine. But I just wonder, you know, when the shoots where it's not going to plan, how do you react to that? Because again, everybody gets a plan until they're hit in the face. As what Mike Tyson says. Whilst we're not getting hit in the face by a client or a situation, sometimes things go wrong. And we have to find solutions. And that's where you can pull from your experience. So young DPs out there, I'm not saying you shouldn't call yourself DP. I'm just saying, just be careful, because when it's all fine when it's going well, but when it doesn't go well, it's how you react to that. And how do you plan for that? And how do you, you know, make an action plan and still execute what you're being paid to do? Because again, if you don't do what you need to do, the shoot doesn't get done. And then the producer doesn't, you know, the producer or production company, you know, has to explain to the client why what they've planned for isn't done. And then next thing you know, nobody's getting paid, or, you know, or the production company goes bust because they've had to bankroll the shoot. They've not been paid. So it's important to kind of think that. But again, people got to make money whatever way they can these days.
And on that bombshell, yeah, I think you are right. One thing to remember is obviously if you don't do a good job, you probably won't get hired again. And if you're freelance, you rely on word of mouth, you rely on getting hired back in and doing a good job. And it's brutal. It's brutal out there. And it's only getting more brutal. So you really need to be on top of your game at all times. So it is...
Never mess up, ever. Or you'll never work again.
You know what? You absolutely can mess up. But just be prepared to fix it. That's the thing. It's like you've got to, you know, I've had a client walking in the room as the camera isn't working. And I remember my AC at the time saying, what are we going to do? And I just turned to him and I went, we're going to fix it. And we fixed it, you know. And maybe I was lucky, but you've got to, if I didn't have the knowledge, I wouldn't have been able to fix it. And a lot of the times you are kind of having to, I don't want to say wing it, but like you said, things change. Ideals don't always manifest how you hope they would. It rains, this happens, that happens. You've got to be able to think on your feet. You've got to be able to come up with a plan and execute it well. And people will love you for it. If you can keep a cool while you do that, don't get stressed. Getting stressed never fixes anything. You will not be, you'll never work better by being stressed. Remember that.
Never.
Stay calm, think logically, and other people will learn from that. They'll lead from you. Because if you get stressed, I always think a stressy director, you're going to kill the shoot. But if you're a director that can stay calm, an AD that can stay calm, be collected, know what to do, then other people look at you and they're like, they're not panicking, I don't need to panic. And that's the same for a DP. Don't panic your department. You're the one that needs to stay cool in all of this. And yeah, you've got another 10 shots to get in the next 40 minutes, but you'll do it. It'll be fine, you know.
How would we normally go about that, Mark? How would we? So, Mark, we got to get like 5 shots here in the next like 20 minutes. I'd
think of a lighting setup that was quick to move around, you know, maybe battery operated lights, or I'd try and think of some shots where we could keep the lighting relatively similar and we just bounce around. You know, there's ways to work through that problem, and panicking and is not going to fix it. So you just think about, well, what's going to let me do my job quicker, right? Less lighting, maybe. More people on the lights so that we can move them around quicker. Battery operated lights, you know, how maybe someone holding a light instead of rigging it on a stand, stuff like that, so that you can move quickly, do your job effectively, and get everyone home in a timely manner.
And also to remember that it may not look as cool as you'd like it to be, you know, maybe how you're doing it. And people may say they don't think about this, but I do think people think about whether it looks cool or looks proper. Sometimes you just gotta wing it, get it done. You know, that's the audience doesn't know. As long as it's safe, sometimes you gotta just get it done. And I think, I think that's a great way to kind of end the pod. You know, just come up with a plan, think of it. And again, this isn't for, I don't want to discourage anyone. It's just practice and experience. That doesn't kill anybody, you know? But just think, plan ahead, think about what can go wrong, and always have a couple of solutions in your bag or your van, you know, if it's kit, but also if you're on the location, just think on your feet. Think on your feet, because things change, and never make your part of the shoot more important than what everybody else is doing, because it just isn't.